I'm on a walk. There's a biking, walking, running path that goes through this area and ends, or at least bypasses, pretty close to where I'm parked. There's the flight park, that natural sandbar that's perfect for paragliding and stuff. I'm parked on a smaller sandbar on the other side of there that's really secluded that you can't see, and I'm just on a walk. Look how smoky and hazy it is. There are just a whole bunch of houses that rim here. These houses are literally at the very, very, very north end of Utah Valley. That house way up in the corner is like the furthermost house on this side of the freeway in Utah Valley. And there's a van parked on the top of the sandbar up there. You can barely see it where my finger kind of is, way up there. I'm on a walk near the flight park. There's a path that goes around here. Probably kind of dumb because we have all this smoke in the air. I can totally feel it. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I had to get out of the first RV and stop for a year and a half. Boy, that was a difficult decision. I actually managed to travel a little bit during 2020. But most of it was, you know, locked down, obviously, and it was incredibly difficult to do anything. So I was actually camped out at the flight park here for a good amount of time. But the real reason why I stopped is because I began having some crazy health problems. So let me backtrack to the end of 2018. I was already in the first RV and I was preparing to travel. I'd gone in and seen a nurse practitioner that I'd worked with in a doctor's office that I'd worked with, and just kind of as a physical health checkup, you know, because I was getting ready to travel. She ran a bunch of blood work and it turns out that I came back with really low testosterone, which for a man isn't a great thing. Now, fast forward, and it turns out in hindsight she may have improperly tested me. She says it would be best if I get on testosterone replacement therapy. And, you know, I didn't know any better, so I was like, okay, sure. I didn't have exactly overt symptoms of low testosterone. She had put me on testosterone and I didn't think anything about it. She never filled me in on some of the details and potential complications that I only found out about after the fact. So for the first, well, all of 2019 and almost all of 2020, I was on that TRT, and it worked great for the first year. But I began having really weird symptoms, especially in 2020. You know, given all of the extra stress of 2020, one of the things that happened was that it shot my blood pressure way up. I ended up getting sick twice in 2020, neither of which was COVID, ironically. The doctor put me on antibiotics, which is one of the things that I think contributed to me having problems. And my blood pressure was 200 over 110. It was crazy high. So they put me on blood pressure medication and a very high dose. They didn't even consider that it was the testosterone that was doing this. I only discovered after the fact that testosterone can do that, because what it does is it makes the blood thicker. And I ended up with a blood condition called secondary polycythemia that I began having symptoms of that I didn't understand. I was having breathing problems. I was unusually prone to stress, just dizziness and other weird things going on. So I ended up near, I don't know, August of 2020, going in and seeing the nurse because we were periodically doing lab work when I was traveling, and she wanted to put me on a secondary hormone called HCG, which she said would offset potential problems from the testosterone. But it turns out that the HCG just made everything worse. And that's when everything started to go haywire in my body. And I was having cognitive issues, dizziness, spaciness. I was pressure in my head. Everything was going crazy. So I ended up in the emergency room at one point when I was traveling down in St. George. So I had tried to travel. Honestly. And so, you know, as the year was going on, 2020 was going on, my stress levels were going higher, which I know a lot of people's were. But then I began experiencing all these weird symptoms that I couldn't figure out. And I started doing a bunch of research and found out that many of them were symptoms of a blood condition called secondary polycythemia, which is a known potential from testosterone. Well, the nurse didn't tell me that once you go on TRT, it's very hard to get off of it because the body stops producing its own testosterone. And I subsequently found out that I probably wasn't diagnosed correctly. So I had been here and I tried to travel again during the winter. I took off, I went south, I went to St. George, and I was there for all of a couple of days, and my first scooter crashed in a great big blaze of glory. It didn't crash, but it had some catastrophic mechanical failures. And I just was so depressed, so I had two options. I could just come back up to central Utah and try and live through the winter up here, or go to Las Vegas and buy another scooter. But I was so unsure because my body was being so funky. I ended up having these really weird vision things going on. So when I figured out the correlation between the HCG and the ramping up of my symptoms, I quit it. But by that time, my body was so far out of whack. And I went to some conventional doctors and they were pretty much useless. And I ended up consulting with a naturopathic doctor who used to prescribe hormone replacement therapy. And he ended up stopping, he said, because he saw so many issues of people like me developing problems. And he said that basically what had been happening was that the testosterone and the HCG and the antibiotics and blood pressure medications and a series of other things had all stressed my liver out significantly, and I was having manifestations of liver dysfunction. So it's, you know, a good year and a half, approaching 2 years since then, and I've been on this slow recovery, you know, program, but it's been kind of bewildering. So I had to go off the testosterone, and of course you crash for a while. The body doesn't just suddenly start producing its own testosterone. And I tried to go back on it mid-2021, and all the symptoms came back, and so I decided I had to go off it and let my body recover and try and do its own thing. So the decision to get out of the RV was because I didn't know if I could continue to try and travel and deal with what was going on with my body, and I needed some stability. Honestly, I probably would still be in that first RV had not the whole pandemic thing happened. So since then, I've also quit coffee. I quit coffee 7 months ago because I realized it was affecting me hormonally, because it raises cortisol and potentially lowers testosterone, and it raises stress levels. That's actually been a really good move for me. My blood pressure has come back down, way down, being off the testosterone and the coffee, making some adjustments to my diet. That naturopath has really helped me. He zeroed in on some things that were going on with me that I'll talk about later. But yeah, I wish I could say that I was still traveling in that RV. I felt like I was on a trajectory of moving in to do good things and that, and I was starting. I'd only been traveling for a year and a half. And so I was just starting to get my sea legs really, truly in it. But I've been able to apply everything that I've learned from that first RV to this second one. This is so bumpy. People are still paragliding up there. They don't usually do it later in the day because the wind conditions apparently aren't as good. So I don't know if I'm going to take the RV back to American Fork. I might do that because I'm only going to be a hop, skip, and a jump. My appointment from where I was at for the past couple of days in American Fork. American Fork and Lehigh are right next to each other. Well, here I am again in American Fork. I came here because I wanted to go halfway between where I was at the point of the mountain and Provo, Utah, where the scooter dealership was. I took my scooter down there today just because I wanted to have a sound looked at. I didn't really think anything was horribly wrong, but since I'm here and since the dealership is there, I decided to go do it. And this is a perfect halfway point between there and here, and I knew of this parking space, so I decided to come here. Oh, dang it. That's not good. Okay. So I'm taking my scooter in. I think there's a nut missing right here, and I've been hearing sort of a scraping sound coming from the front. But, so I'm at this place called the Scooter Lounge in Provo, Utah. Yeah, I had called the other day and talked to somebody about having my scooter looked at. It's just been making kind of a scraping sound sometimes on the front.
Give me a minute and I'll have someone come.
Okay, thank you. Well, he thinks it's just some dirt or something on the disc, front brake. So hopefully that's all it is. And then I can be on my way. There was also a front missing bolt that I think was causing the front fascia or something to rattle a little bit. So he's gonna put that on. Yeah. So anyway, he didn't really find anything. There was one bolt missing on the front of the scooter that he took care of. And I'm kind of glad to have that in place. And he said I don't need another oil change for another 800 miles or so. So I seem to be good on that. I mean, it's a great scooter to drive. But of course, when I was there, I totally forgot to ask them about getting one of those little cargo storage things on the back of the RV, on the back of the scooter. I had meant to ask them about that. It's like a little basket. I may end up having to get rid of my satchel that I've got my computer and stuff in, because it just sits at my feet, taking up a lot of space, and it may be better to get another backpack. So I don't know, I'm mulling that over.